This is News Now. With us today is Belmont resident and local celebrity who may become a state and national celebrity someday, Select Board member Elizabeth Dionne. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Joanna. It's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak together.
Well, I wanted to have you on the show to talk about your campaign for state treasurer. But before we get into that, can you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself, your background, how many years you lived in Belmont, your family, career,
Sure.
and volunteer service to the town?
So my husband and I, this is probably the most salient fact, have four children. And three of the four went through Belmont High School. The fourth has autism, still lives with us, is doing really well, but has informed a lot of what our lives are. So I first came to Massachusetts from Utah in 1988 to attend college at Wellesley. And never thought that this is where I would make my home, but we have. My husband and I have lived here most of the time since then. Was away for law school for a little bit, but came back. And this is really home. I say I drive like a Bostonian, which is what makes me truly native now. um, but so practiced for a few years in corporate law, and then because of our son's autism, I stepped back to become his full-time advocate. And it took a while. He was pretty involved. It was pretty serious, and absolutely made the right choice there. He's doing very well now. But by the time he was fairly stable, and I could have gone back to corporate law, looked at it and realized I don't have to do this. I'm fortunate to have options. And so instead, I did two things. I started representing low income special needs children through Massachusetts Advocates for Children, because special education law really depends on what we call private enforcement. It really depends on families being able to articulate and defend their own rights. And I could do that for my son, but these other families couldn't do it for their children. So I did that for a number of years. And I have always loved local government. And so I began 10 years ago by running for town meeting. And within a year, I was on the finance committee. We call that in Belmont the warrant committee, but a lot of towns call it their finance committee, where we do a deep dive every year into the town's budget and revenues and policies that impact the town's financial well-being. And then a year after that, I joined the Community Preservation Committee and then became chair. And the Community Preservation Committee is very important because it is it's the gatekeeper on funds for recreation, open space, affordable housing, and historic preservation. And so between the warrant committee, and then I very quickly became chair of the Community Preservation Committee. So between the warrant committee and the Community Preservation Committee, and I was on both of them, I really gained a very deep understanding of municipal finance and especially Belmont. And for years, people had said, why don't you run for select board? And I just said, no, I've got kids at home, I'm busy. And then
That's a
Adam
big
Dash,
decision.
and then Adam Dash announced 3 years ago that he was not running again. And at that point, Keats and my last child had gone to college. And I thought, okay, I can do this now. And so I jumped in. And I've accomplished a lot on the select board. I think I've very much been known as both a change agent and a relentless reformer. But I think people need to understand that that was the culmination of years of pushing on various things and very much a team effort. So, for example, one of the things that we finally managed to do was fully vest our local pension fund in the state fund. And that really mattered because Roy Epstein, at my request, had done a deep dive in 2020 and realized that over the life of the state fund, which is called PRIT, had we been fully invested in PRIT, we would have had $10 million more in our retirement fund. And for a town like Belmont, $10 million is a game changer.
Yes.
And so through a series of strategic appointments through the select board, we managed to finally change the composition of the retirement board such that they finally fully invested all assets in the state system. And I know I'm getting a little into the weeds here, but what I want to say is that was the culmination of a 7-year effort that began with the warrant committee taking a very hard look at our pensions and saying,
Yes.
gee, because this is a huge check that we have to write every year. Every year, the very first check that we write is the $10 to $11 million to make up our pension obligations. And those are promises that we made. Those are pensions that we owe to our firefighters, to our police officers, to our DPW workers. We made that promise. We need to honor it. But we also have to find the funding at the same time that we're trying to fix our roads and fund our schools and pay for law enforcement.
Hmm.
So it was a real problem. And it's one of the things that I'm very proud of on my select board service. And I've gone way far afield of where you wanted me to go. So
Well,
just
that's okay.
quickly,
So now you're in your third year on the select board, your final
yes,
year.
third and final year.
Yeah, and yeah, I would say you did a lot in 3 years, and you're definitely, from what I'm hearing, a number cruncher. Am I right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I had fully planned to run for select board for another term, and we can get into why I'm running for state treasurer.
Yes,
But
that's my next
a
question.
major driver for that was in Belmont. We are doing everything that we can. We restructured our finance team. We've restructured departments. I look and I see everywhere that we can. We're working faster, smarter, better. We're bringing in technology to boost the efforts of our very hardworking town employees. And we also, and I give the school committee huge credit. The select board said, we need you to bring down the growth curve of school expenses. And they have, and it's been hard, but they've done it. We have
Hmm.
also reformed restaurant permitting process so that restaurants can open more easily. We are in the process, this is a promise that we made to voters, of upzoning to allow more commercial development in Belmont. I looked at all that we have done. I don't see anything more that we can do at the state level. And I started to realize the problem is bigger than us. And the problem applies to every one of Massachusetts, 351 cities and towns. That over the same period that the state budget has doubled, local aid's gone up only 25%. And if you look at that time frame, going up 25% adjusted for inflation means it's actually dropped by 25%. And we have mandates from the state and the federal government that we have to meet, especially in the areas of English language learners and special education, which again, near and dear to my heart, but it's a huge portion of our education budget. And we have been hearing story after story of wasted money, whether it's the state inspector general or the state auditor, where they've been allowed in. And right now they're not being allowed in, but where they've been allowed in, they have found many areas where the state has wasted money, where there's been fraud, where there's been abuse, where there's been waste.
Hmm.
And I looked at that and thought, wow, the state could absolutely find $2 or $3 billion that it could return to cities and towns. And if it did that, that would be a game changer at the local level. It would make all the difference. There is no waste in Belmont. We count our pennies, nickels, and dimes.
Yeah.
So I looked at it and realized there's a tsunami coming. We need a bigger boat. And
Oh,
the bigger boat that I saw was, that's why I call myself the taxpayer's treasurer, is
yes.
going to Beacon Hill and being a voice for everybody at the local level who is maxed out on what they can pay in property taxes. Let me give you a few stats.
Okay.
Massachusetts used to be very competitive, very attractive. We have lost all our competitive advantages, all of them. The Massachusetts miracle is over. We are once again Taxachusetts. So let me give you some of these stats, and this is what really prompted me to run.
Okay.
We are second in the nation for cost of living. We are second in the nation for state level debt load per capita. We are third in the nation for utilities costs, or sometimes first or second, depending on how you count. We are third in the nation for property tax burden. We are fourth in the nation for population loss. And we'd be worse, except that at the same time we were losing our young people and our middle class working taxpayers. That was offset by the migrants who came. And want to be very clear that immigration is an important part of our economy. I am not anti-immigrant, but I am opposed to the right to shelter law, where the state spent probably, we think, about $3 billion because
Hmm.
we offered the best benefits in the United States. If I were a migrant, I'd come here too. That was a rational decision. So our population loss has been masked by the fact that we've replaced high earning taxpayers with people who may not be earning or not earning enough to pay taxes at all. We are dead last in the nation for job creation. So and we're seventh in the nation for overall property tax burden. None of these are lists that we want to be on. I feel that Massachusetts has brought itself back from the brink before, and we can do it again, but not if nobody's on Beacon Hill speaking up for taxpayers and for efficiency and for streamlining. Um, so I've gone on at length. I
That's
can
okay.
speak more
Let's
specifically why the treasurer's office, but
well
that is
let's
why I I had fully intended to run for another term as select board member. We have really done great things as a team. My colleagues have all been outstanding. I look across Belmont and the quality of our volunteers is phenomenal. But this is a bigger problem than Belmont. If I want to help Belmont, I need to be speaking for Belmont and every other city and town at the state level.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for all that great information and background. How will you be different from the current state treasurer, Deborah Goldberg?
In every possible way that you can imagine. This started with a whistleblower who, and there are actually multiple whistleblowers, and we will be releasing information over time. But let me just give 3 areas. Let me start out by saying she's deeply unpopular in her own party, let alone statewide. And that a lot of people don't understand this, but the taxpayer or the treasurer in Massachusetts is probably the most important job that people know nothing about. At any given point, the state treasurer controls up to 20% of state assets. So it is a uniquely powerful position, which means that from day one, if I went in, I could immediately affect change. 3 areas where I'd affect change. First of all, spending is out of control there. And why that matters is the taxpayer is responsible for several programs that actually funnel dollars back to local aid. So every dollar wasted in the treasurer's department or office is a dollar that's not available for Belmont or any other city or town. So the Republican Party in September released a list of tens of millions of dollars of excess spending. But I have to tell you where this came from was a Democratic whistleblower who was frustrated that he was getting nowhere. So he's the one who came to the state Republican Party and said, you need to look at these numbers. They're all publicly available. So for example, over $20 million in 3 years on rental space. I have no idea what that was for. Apparently, and I do need to nail this down, she has a clothing budget. Well, the current state treasurer is wealthy. I can guarantee that if I'm treasurer, no one will be paying for my clothing, nor will they be funding my overseas travel. So we found expensive meals, expensive travel, a clothing budget, over $50,000 spent in 3 years on water bottles. I really need to get to the bottom of that because that seems environmentally problematic. And we have some of the best water in the country through the MWRA. Why on earth are we spending this much money on water bottles? So there is a lot there that we need to delve into, but we know that there is excess spending. And again, every dollar that is spent there is a dollar that came out of the taxpayer's pocket. Second area, transparency. And we know that this is an area of huge concern for Massachusetts voters. So I was one of the 72% who voted to audit the legislature. Hasn't happened yet. I actually met Diana DiZoglio about a week and a half ago, and I said, Diana, 2 things you need to know. First of all, you are the single most popular politician in Massachusetts right now. Nobody cares what her party is. Everybody feels like she is a voice for the voters and for the taxpayers, and that has been sadly lacking. So huge credit to Diana DiZoglio for pushing against her own party to try and do what's right for the voters and the taxpayers. But I said the first thing I would do, and the second thing is, first of all, most popular politician in Massachusetts, fabulous example to the rest of us. Second, the very first thing that I would do as treasurer is invite her in to audit every one of the 12 departments that the treasurer oversees. So, and then the last thing that I would do is I would bring in the state inspector general to do the same thing. I call this the Goldberg iceberg. So the current treasurer is Deborah Goldberg. An iceberg, there's 10% above the surface that you know, and there's 90% lurking beneath. The 10% that we know is really bad. So we know that she's made a complete hash over at the Cannabis Control Commission. And there was an audit released in August. The state auditor did release a report saying that there's no financial controls there, but not only are there no financial controls, they haven't been doing the testing they need to do a product to ensure public safety. And the reason that matters is because Deb Goldberg had appointed Shannon O'Brien in 22 to clean up the commission. We also know there's huge cronyism and patronage going on over there. And Shannon, another Democrat, very respected, did her job so well that Goldberg's cronies got upset. And so Goldberg accused her of racism with no basis. It's a long story, I'll summarize it. But after 2 years of legal battles and $1 million that we had to pay out of pocket in court costs to outside counsel, the judge said this was a house of cards. There was no evidence of racism. Goldberg had no grounds for firing O'Brien, and the judge reinstated O'Brien. And what I understand from people there is she is once again doing a fabulous job pushing forward with what the legislature wanted done with the Cannabis Control Commission. My point is, oh, and then, for example, another issue that came up is in November, word was released that $1.1 million had been stolen from unclaimed property, which the treasurer also oversees. 650,000 of that was left by a mother to her two sons who are high and dry. That money is gone. How on earth did that happen? That's why I think we need transparency, light and air, full audit. So I've said I would immediately control costs. I would immediately guarantee transparency. And then the last thing that I would do is cut out patronage. The reason that the treasurer's office is so powerful, and it's even more powerful than most other treasurer's offices across the United States, is because every time there was a Republican governor, the Democratic legislature would take something that typically the governor might oversee and give it to the treasurer because that preserved patronage. And patronage is where you hire people in your own party to reward them for supporting you. So it's an insider's game. It means that qualified outsiders don't have a chance because they weren't party hacks who were getting these jobs. So when the lottery was adopted, Frank Sargent, Republican governor, was not going to engage in patronage. So the legislature gave it to Bob Crane, who was a 27-year treasurer and famous for his patronage. He actually bragged about it. He was very proud of patronage. He was proud of being a party man who supported the party machine. Then when Mitt Romney was governor, the legislature took the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission and gave it to the treasurer. And then finally, the Cannabis Control Commission was formed when Charlie Baker was governor. So that is part of why the treasurer's office is so uniquely powerful, and where, as an elected official, I really could go in and immediately make a difference in those three areas that I've outlined. The first, controlling expenses. The second, increasing transparency. The third, eliminating patronage to make sure that qualified people are running the lottery, are running the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission, are running any of the other 12 departments that the treasurer oversees.
Okay, well, definitely sounds like you have your priorities laid out and you want to make change. Um,
Well, I feel like I did that in Belmont, and it is hard. It is hard to make change because you upset a small but very vocal minority. But I have loved serving in Belmont. I really have. I am a local government nerd. And I really, someone asked me, are you intimidated by this? And I said, no, I'm excited. This actually sounds fun. Like, I think I'd have such a good time going in and hiring the best people and changing the culture in the treasurer's department. And really, really, this is what it comes down to me. Um, Sending more money back to cities and towns for roads. Potholes aren't red or blue. Potholes are potholes. They don't care what party you are. They just want to be fixed. Uh, we are down two workers in or two officers in the police department. I'd like to restore that because our population is going to keep growing. We're down two officers in our fire department. We're down four workers in DPW. That means that our mission critical work at the local level is not getting done. And I talked about holding the line on cost in the schools, and we've needed to do that. I would love to have uh, earlier world language instruction. We can't do that right now. I would love to have more AP classes available. We can't do that right now. So at the same time that I've been asking the school committee to hold the line on spending, and they have, to their credit, they've taken so much heat, and I give credit to the superintendent as well. They legitimately could use more resources, but so can the town. Everybody could put more resources to good use. And I'd like to at least provide that opportunity.
so you think that by becoming state treasurer, you could actually help solve some of these problems for Belmont as well as
Yeah,
other areas?
absolutely. Now, to be fair, at the end of the day, state aid is controlled by appropriation, or local aid is controlled by appropriations in the legislature. But if I am up there as a visible and vocal voice saying, hey, I have just expanded the pot by this number of millions of dollars, every one of those millions of dollars should be going back to cities and towns. So at least being a voice for the taxpayers treasurer. And also, in particular, the lottery is important. And we can argue about whether or not there should be state-sponsored gambling, but the lottery has been a major, major driver of local aid. And there are historical reasons for that. It had to do with the adoption of Prop 2.5. But especially in the lottery, if our administrative costs are too high in the lottery, that's money that's not available for unrestricted local aid. It's money that's not available for the Mass School Building Authority, which the treasurer also oversees. So part of the reason I got excited by this is I looked at the 12 departments and realized I had interacted as a select board member with every single one of them. I actually think that a select board member is probably the best preparation that you could have to run that department.
Wow. So, as far as your experience and qualifications, what do you think makes you the best candidate out of your experience and qualifications for state?
Uh, First of all, I am not a professional politician. If I do the hard thing, make the hard choices, and the voice for the voters, and I pay the cost, that's okay. I have a private life I can come back to. I've got a husband and four wonderful children. So I am in it for the right reasons. This has nothing to do with ego. It has everything to do with serving the public, which I have loved doing at the local level and would like to do at the state level. And then the 10 years that I've spent in local government, again, just the nitty gritty, the ins and outs of budgeting, uh, understanding what it takes to work with the Massachusetts School Building Authority to build a school. And we were fortunate. Belmont, we have a beautiful new middle and high school, but a recent report came out, again, kind of scathing, that the MSBA has served wealthy communities, but it has not served the poor communities. Another challenge with the MSBA is that it's funding, there's a little bit of a school building industrial complex. There are not incentives built in to restrain costs. So Lexington just approved a $660 million high school. Madison Park in Boston might cost as much as $1 billion. Every dollar that's spent on one of these shiny new high schools, whereas ours cost under 300 million for two schools, every dollar that's spent is feeding the pockets of the the design engineers, the contractors, the architects, but they're not available for other schools. If we could take a long, hard look at how we're funding schools, that's a fixed pie. I'd like more of those dollars to be available. So going back, I'm in this for the right reasons. I'm not a career politician. I do have the appropriate experience. And then in particular, my legal background as an attorney, the point of the treasurer is not to run each of the departments. And I've learned a lot about leadership. So I think I understand the nature of good leadership. And as I've looked at the treasurer's office, the problems that are there, it's too big for any one person to know what's going on. How do I avoid $1 million theft from the unclaimed property division? And I would take the same principles that I've used at the local level. So Patrice Garvin is the town administrator. She's taken a lot of heat. I have repeatedly stood up and said, the select board sets the policy. Patrice is doing what we are telling her to do. If you are angry, you get mad at us, not her. The job of a true leader is to take the heat. So, and to set policy directions. So when Shannon O'Brien was doing a great job at the Cannabis Control Commission, Deb Goldberg's job was not to say, ooh, got to find a pretext to fire her because she upset people. Her job was to say, Shannon, you're doing a great job. I will take the heat. So that's the first thing a leader does. So I would look at each of those 12 departments, make sure that we have the best people there. If they're not, then replace them. But if they are good, I don't care what party they are, they're going to stay and continue to do a great job for the taxpayers of Massachusetts.
Mhm.
So that's the first thing. You appoint good people. Second thing, you take heat so that they can get their job done. The arrows come to me, not them. But the final thing, and this is about setting a culture and being clear about our values, a culture of openness. Deb Goldberg has a reputation for only listening to a very small circle of yes people. She's hurt a lot of little people. That's where one of the whistleblowers came from. We know what she did to Shannon O'Brien. She's done similar things to the little people in the treasurer's office, the little people who are watching out for the taxpayers' money, who wanted to do the right thing. And she's fired more than one of them. Someone from Alcohol Beverage Control Commission. I've spoken to someone from the lottery. So there are a lot of people who are very unhappy about things that are going wrong there. My job is to have an open door and say, anybody can talk to me. I will never violate your confidentiality. Tell me what's going on. If it's bad, I want to hear it. Because if I can deploy, if people genuinely believe that I have their back, that I genuinely want to hear the bad news as well as the good news, then that information will start to come back to me as the leader before it explodes into a crisis. So again, set the tone, hire qualified people, openness and transparency, and create a culture where each one of us each day is coming as a public servant for all the taxpayers of Massachusetts. I feel like we have done that in Belmont. Without going into detail, we had a situation where some employees were close to leaving because they were feeling so harassed. And as select board chair, I took very decisive action. I went over and talked to them and said, I have your back. The
Yeah.
select board will have your back. And they did what they needed to do, and we had their backs, and they are still here, still doing a great job for the people in Belmont.
Now,
Yeah.
you mentioned like your children won't be able to afford to stay in Massachusetts most likely. So what do you say to people who say that? I can't afford to live in Massachusetts. I need to get out. What do you say to
I say go to the ballot box.
them?
Don't vote with your feet, vote with the ballot. Look at who's created the mess and vote for an alternative. And again, the Democratic Party used to be different. It used to be very, very cognizant of Massachusetts' competitive advantage. And it's gone so far to the left that Democrats don't recognize their party leadership anymore. So I really do want to be the treasurer for all taxpayers. I don't care. I have always worked across the aisle. I've always been collaborative, collegial, and you have to do that. But Massachusetts has a long history of success with Republican governors, whether it was Frank Sargent or Bill Weld or Paul Cellucci or Jane Swift or Mitt Romney or Charlie Baker, who was the most popular governor in Massachusetts in the United States, not just Massachusetts, but the United States. So Massachusetts voters have recognized this. A friend of mine here in Belmont has said, well, you get the government you deserve. So please vote at the ballot box, not with your feet. Give us some time. Have faith that we can turn this around if the elections turn the right way in November.
So what are your future aspirations? If you're elected state treasurer, what's next for you, Elizabeth?
State treasurer. If something comes up, certainly I'll consider it. But people had asked me for years about select board. I said no until it was right. As soon as I was on the select board, people were asking me about state office. And I said no until this opportunity to be treasurer came up. So right now, I'm laser focused on the treasurer's office. And if we do all the fun, exciting things that we want to do, which is reform and return money to Massachusetts taxpayers, cities, and towns, uh, I just think there are many, many ways that we can serve. If this is not successful, if I'm not the treasurer, I'll find other ways to serve. That is what makes a life worthwhile and valuable, is to feel that you're contributing. There are many, many ways to contribute. So the way that I contribute is to be where I am in the moment, laser focused on what I can do to benefit my family and those around me.
And what's your final message to our viewers today?
My final message is that I have faith in Massachusetts voters, and I believe in this state. I'm running to be the taxpayer's treasurer because of all the bad statistics that I cited at the beginning. But Massachusetts still has incredible resources. We've still got wonderful health care that we can streamline, take advantage of. We have the possibility of turning our educational malaise around. We have institutions of higher learning that contribute so greatly to the quality of life here. And again, we have really wonderful voters, taxpayers, residents who want to do the right thing. And so my final message is that I have faith. If people will give me the chance, the opportunity, they'll vote for me. I'll make that faith good. I'll be the taxpayer's treasurer. I'll return money to cities, towns, taxpayers, and I will be a voice on Beacon Hill for each of the little people who turn over the dollars that the state spends.
Well, thank you for coming on the show, and I wish you well with the rest of your campaign.
Thank you, and also thank you to Belmont Media and all the work that you do there. As you know, I'm a huge proponent of local media. I was the only local official who went to testify on Beacon Hill this past summer in favor of a dedicated income stream for all local media, not just Belmont Media Center. Democracy does not function if people are not educated. So I am so grateful for the work that Belmont Media Center does, that all the other local media centers do, and grateful to the voters who tune in to learn and become educated.
Thank you, Elizabeth.